Hello and welcome to yesterday's airlines and the final ranking video of 2024, as Gemini Jets have literally just announced their December releases on the 19th of December, which is very late for them. And obviously it looks like they've been having a few issues this month, because even for Gemini the release set is very small. In fact, there are only 6 models announced rather than the usual 10, and one of those is a flaps up and flaps down version. So really there's just 5 individual liveries present here. So it's a smaller month than usual, and that means that this year Gemini have actually produced 106 aircraft in 400 scale, which is smaller than their usual 110 and smaller than most of the other major manufacturers in terms of number of releases. In fact, dramatically smaller than JC Wings and NG Models, who produce roughly 3 times as many releases as Gemini. Smaller than Phoenix as well, who produce probably at least twice as many models, and smaller than Aero Classics too. So, and actually smaller than Panda if you take into account all of the subsidiary models that Panda makes. So actually Gemini, in terms of the number of livery airline combos they make in a year, are probably the smallest of the major brands, except for Aviation 400. Anyway, last month's Geminis, the pictures have come out relatively recently, I think, and it doesn't look like there were any shocking messes made of those models. They all look perfectly reasonable. There's that little American Eagle Dash 8, looked quite pleasant, but again, as always, it's difficult to tell from the Gemini photos exactly how good they look. We've got the American A321, yeah, it's fine. Delta A350, limitations of the mold, it looks okay. Got the FedEx 777, and they actually did go and print exactly what they had put on the artwork, which isn't exactly the new finished livery, so that's interesting, but I presume that they got that signed off by FedEx before they produced the model. Then you've got an Atlas Air Interactive, the KLM A321. Again, difficult to tell how bad it looks when you can't see the engine clearance from these pictures. And then you've got the Widerøe E190 E2, which looks like it probably turned out really very nicely. I'm not entirely certain about the size of the nose gear, but I think that'll be a great model. And lastly, the WestJet Dash 8 Q400, which again looks solid. So you've got a decent bunch of models from last month, if not necessarily spectacular, but that is kind of Gemini in a nutshell. Decent, not spectacular. And when you look back through the range of models they produced this year, it isn't particularly impressive. I mean, they've only produced that 106 number of models. There's quite a lot of repetition in terms of aircraft type and airline. There's really a bit of a lack of diversity. I mean, there were 3 RAAF BA business jets, Boeing business jets earlier in the year, for example. There's been quite a lot of the usual airlines, United, Delta, so on and so forth. But I guess those are big selling airlines and they do what they do. There have been a few nice selections that are a little bit more unusual. Obviously, they seem to have this relationship with Widerøe, which has been nice to see. So we've got a Dash 8 Q400 and that E-Jet. In fact, the E2s have all been nice this year. There's been a couple of good CRJs. And a few MD-90s, which have also been nice, and more of that in the video to come up. So, before I get into the rankings, please don't forget to chuck a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much, as always, for those people that do that. Really appreciate that. Check me out at Yesterday Airlines on Instagram and Facebook, and of course, yesterdaysairlines.com, the hub of the work that I do. But now let's get on and check out this small list of Gemini releases for December. So as I said, just the 6 models to talk about today, and 2 of those are effectively the same, just variants of each other. We're going to start with an American Airlines MD-90 N904 Romeo Alpha. So it's one of the ex-Reno Air aircraft, and it wasn't long ago that Gemini made a Reno Air MD-90, and that was one of the models that I actually purchased of Gemini's this year and was very nice. That came out in July, and that was N905 Romeo Alpha. So this is N904 Romeo Alpha. American did get to repaint the MD-90s into their own colours, though they couldn't natural metal the fuselage, so they ended up with this slightly ungainly white base for the fuselage and then grey elsewhere. But it was quite unique, and that was pretty cool, I guess. So this is a good partner for the previous Reno Air aircraft, in the sense that that aircraft would have worn exactly the scheme a couple of years after delivery. They didn't last too long in the American fleet, but nonetheless, a great moment in aviation history. So that's nice. Now, Reno Air and American MD-90s, obviously there haven't been a lot of these in the past. In the American colours, there has been a release previously by Dragon Wings. It's not a very a recent release, as you would imagine. And I want to thank Steiner for letting me steal his picture for this. So this photograph is from the collection of my friend Steiner, and it's a beauty. He's got their old release from Dragon, which was made in 2004, so 20 years ago. And that release turned out very nicely. They actually did make N905RA, the same reg as the aircraft that Gemini made in Reno Air colours earlier in the year. It's a good mould, the old Dragon mould, so if you've already got this, not sure there's a dramatic need to replace it. Having said that, it's not easy to find, and the Gemini JC Wings MD-90 is very nice. So I think this will be a really good release. It's one that I almost certainly acquire myself, and I'm going to put this one into Supersonic. Next up, we've got a couple of Edelweiss A350s, and this is where the flaps up and down versions come into play. So the registration of the aircraft is HB India Hotel Charlie, the same aircraft which has been released by Phoenix and has been announced by Aviation 400 already. So these are the third announced versions, though I believe only the Phoenix edition is actually in the market at the present time. Of all of the three that have been announced, I'd say that the Aviation 400 one is likely to be the best, but we still haven't seen the detachable gear version of their A350. I presume that will come out in the new year, probably February, March sort of time. I'm just guessing. I don't know. Whether I would wait or whether I'd go for this one if I was desperate to get Edelweiss on an A350, or whether I'd hope that NG Models would produce it, because it is the kind of release I would expect them to make as well. I'd probably wait and see if it was me. I do like the livery on Edelweiss. It's obviously colourful and attractive, and unusually so for a modern A350 operator. So that is very good. I think all I'm going to do here is I'm going to put the standard version into Workhorse, and I might put the flaps down version up into High Flyer. Nobody else is offering that concept on an A350 anyway, and yeah, that probably maybe you should elevate that into High Flyer. Next, we've got another Atlas Air 747AF, and if I sound slightly about that, it's because I am. We seem to have lots and lots of these recently from all kinds of brands, NG, JC, Gemini, too many. This one's N862 Golf Tango. It has been made, it's wearing this Kuehne-Nagel scheme. It has been made already by Gemini and Phoenix and NG. Two of those were this year, including the Gemini. But the difference here is clearly that this one is on the interactive mold. So if you're a big fan of the interactive and been waiting for this, that's great. But, I probably scored the last month's Atlas Air interactive quite well, but I'm kind of bored of seeing so many Atlas Air 747-8. So I'm just going to put this one into Workhorse. It's not exciting me at all. And I wonder how many collectors were hanging out for the interactive version and therefore didn't acquire one of the previous three versions that has been made. It'd be interesting to know if anyone has been hanging out for the interactive. So if you literally have not bought any of the others because you wanted the interactive, drop a comment. I'd be interested to know if anyone has done that. I'd be a little surprised. I do like the interactive myself, but probably not so much that I would necessarily wait in hope that it was released, especially because there have been so many other Atlas Air 747-8s that have been made. Okay, our penultimate model is Hawaiian Airlines A330-200. Can't think of something which is more generically Gemini than this. And it has obviously recently just got some competition because Phoenix themselves have announced Hawaiian A330-200 last month. So that itself is curious because there hadn't been one from Gemini since October 24. So I wonder if this is Gemini trying to kill the sales of Phoenix's version by releasing one literally the month after. It just seems way too convenient for that. And it would obviously be an easy model for Gemini to make, given that they've already done the artwork, because they've released at least two versions of this previously, one in 2018 and one in 2020. So that looks very much like a response to the Phoenix edition that has just come out, I would say. I would definitely be going for the Phoenix version myself. The mold is better. But Gemini's got much better name recognition in the States, and there are still lots of people who would rather buy Gemini over everything else. Poor deluded fools, I would say. But nonetheless, that seems to be the case. That brand name recognition itself is enough, regardless of the quality of the end product. This will be perfectly fine, but the JC Wings Gemini A330 simply isn't up to the same standard as other A330s in the marketplace. Certainly it's inferior, I'd say, to the Phoenix one. It's definitely inferior to the NG version. So, yeah, that's what it is. But it's a very Gemini release anyway, so it's not particularly interesting. Bit of competition, I would say. I'm going to put that one into workhorse. Simple as that. And that leaves us just one model to discuss. And this one is the QantasLink National Jet Systems A220-300 VHX4 Alpha. This one has been pre-announced for a long time, and it is just getting its official announcement now. It's wearing one of the Aboriginal schemes, the new Aboriginal scheme, which, and I apologise to anyone or everyone here, is called Minima Kujara Chikirpa. Yeah, I'm sure I didn't say that correctly. But regardless, it's very green. It's quite an attractive livery. It's incredibly complex, and I imagine this is the reason this has been pre-announced and not actually announced for so long that they've been working on the artwork. It's very difficult artwork to create, so there are just so many little bits of colour and detail in this scheme that it is going to be exceptionally difficult to get right. So no doubt they've been working very hard on the artwork here, and probably working directly with QantasLink themselves to get that correct. It'll be interesting to see how it turns out. Looking at the pictures, the colours do seem a little bit muted on the artwork here compared to the images that I'm seeing of the real thing, but I imagine it will turn out and look very nice. My only real reservations with this are, of course, the state of the Gemini JC A220 mould, which really isn't very good, and the issues primarily sit around the nose. I've complained about this previously. The nose gear is too big. Aircraft sits a bit nose high. The nose shape is just wrong, really, and it makes it look far worse because the size of the cockpit windows is embarrassingly too small. So the aircraft doesn't look really very much like an A220 if you just took the nose, and if you had to guess what plane it was just from looking at the front of this mould, you wouldn't think it was an A220, frankly. It's such an easy fix to increase the size of the cockpit windows, and that would dramatically improve the look of the mould, so I just don't understand why they seem unable to do that, but they do seem completely unable to do that. So my reservations with this release are very much around the form of the mould and the shape of those cockpit windows. It'll be interesting to see how it looks. I don't have dramatically high expectations in that regard. I think the livery will probably look good. Not sure about the rest of it. I'll put it in high flyer. And for many people, I guess this would be a supersonic release. But as I say, I have reservations about the mould and the printing of those cockpit windows. And it does have a big impact on the finished article, in my view. Okay. And that is a nice short roundup of this month's Gemini announcements. Just the 6 models, so a quick look at those. It's not a bad month, I guess, in such a small subset, but you could easily, again, get rid of the Hawaiian and the Atlas, no one probably notice. The Edelweiss is okay, and it's really the American and the Qantas Link which are standing out, I imagine, for most collectors. From my personal perspective, I've not had a great year of Gemini releases. Not a lot has fit my collection criteria. It'd be interesting to know what everyone else thinks. When I look through their release sets, I do see a lot of models that could be released or have been released better by others. Certainly the 767-400s, the A320s, 737s, largely can be made and have been made better elsewhere. So those don't really hold a lot of quality for me. And you've had a couple of very poor Emirates releases, A310s and A300, on those dreadful old molds. But it's not all been bad, as I said earlier. There's been some really nice props in there, especially Q400s. It's had some nice MD90s, a couple of MD80s as well, ATRs here and there, and a Saab 340, which I really like too. So there's been some good models spread throughout. It's the same, I guess, with most brands. Okay, we're interested to see what 2025 brings for Gemini. I'm not expecting dramatic change. Most years, Gemini just potters along, doing exactly what they do, completely oblivious to anything else that's going on in the scale and any competition, and just carries on doing the same thing. But it seems to work for them, and they do still seem to have quite a strong following in the collectorate of people that perhaps should be looking a bit more widely. Anyway, I hope everyone has enjoyed most of the videos that I've done this year, if not all of them, and I appreciate everyone watching. I want to wish everyone a happy festive period. I think 2025 is going to be a very interesting year globally and in 400 scale. Not all of it will be good, but certainly for 400 scale, there's a lot of good competition at the moment, and there will only be more next year. So that, I think, is good for the scale in general. I will be publishing my top 15 models as a YouTube video at some point in the near future, and I will also be doing a written review of 2024 covering all the major brands, what they've been up to, and that kind of thing. So keep an eye out for that material, which will be coming up just after Christmas, probably between Christmas and just after New Year. And I will, again, thank you everyone who's watched. Really appreciate you doing so. Have a great time, and I'll speak again soon. Goodbye.